Chapter 22. The Mail is Black. Did you ever get through all that fan mail? Questioned Shinzo. Jiro had brought a massive umbrella with her. The three of them huddled underneath it in a desperate bid to avoid the downpour. You got fan mail? Jiro gaped. Already? What do you mean, already? I'm surprised I got any at all, Midoriya exclaimed, almost tripping over his shoes as he struggled to stay under the cover of the umbrella. I was surprised when my OWL account got so many followers, said Jiro. It's probably just because of Canary's following us, Shinzo pointed out. Made an account for Raven, too. Not that he had really done anything with it. We still need to convince Ida to make one for Crane. Oh, and then Dove, too, Jiro remembered. Then that's everyone. Are you gonna tell anyone who you are? Midoriya questioned as they approached the UA gates. Nah, it's funnier denying it for now. Good morning, everyone! The three of them stopped just in time to see Ida charging towards them, decked out with a long green coat and Wellington boots as he ran through the rain. Nice raincoat, Jiro scoffed. Why are you all walking so slowly? We'll be late! Ida exclaimed, boosting himself past them with his quirk. We're still 5 minutes early, Shinzo called after him as they tried their best to catch up, despite huddling under the umbrella. UA students should always arrive 10 minutes early, don't you think? As he disappeared under the cover of the building. I swear, he's always so intense, Jiro sighed. She shook the rainwater off her umbrella as they reached the school, chucking it absent-mindedly into the umbrella box, labeled 1A. Midoriya's gaze lingered on it for a moment, realizing how many students didn't seem to be worried at all over their umbrellas being stolen or ruined. Midoriya himself had given up on taking umbrellas to school after his first was stolen and his second had quirkless graffitied all over it. Have you seen Uraraka this morning? Shinzo questioned Midoriya as he shoved his own raincoat, which proved to not be quite waterproof enough, into his locker. Oh, yeah. She didn't have a raincoat, so she kinda just ran ahead of me screaming, Midoriya explained, shaking the water out of his hair. He'd just accepted that he was going to get wet when he left the house that morning, and so was still rather damp when Jiro offered out her umbrella. That was when he heard a rather disgruntled squawk. Oh my god, Shinzo sighed. Oh, Siren! Why must you be like this? Midoriya groaned, pulling the bird from his hair. I don't think pets are permitted in the school grounds, Ida protested as he pulled off his boots and replaced them with his ordinary shoes. I'd like to see them try and remove her, grinned Shinzo. Midoriya just smiled at his bird and ended up tucking her into his pocket where she happily began to clean her feathers. Speaking of feathers, Shinzo hadn't been joking when he said he would never take off the feather necklace. Midoriya could still see the edge of the chain, mostly concealed by the collar of his uniform. Oh, by the way, Ida, Jiro began, picking up her bag as they all started to wander up towards the classrooms. How is your brother? I heard what happened on the news. Midoriya looked at Ida with a worried look on his face. With all the panic about Canary, he'd almost missed the articles on Ingenium, Ida's older brother, who had been critically hurt by the infamous hero killer, Stain. Ah, there's no need to worry, he replied simply. Everything will be fine. Midoriya bit his lip. He wasn't so sure how much he believed him. How about you, Midoriya? Ida suddenly asked. Midoriya jumped. Me? Yes, I see you've still got some withstanding injuries. Midoriya rubbed the bandages on his knuckles, becoming increasingly aware of an itch under the plaster on his chin. Oh, it's okay. Recovery Girl just couldn't do much with it all because of how tired I was. You were one of the only ones with many serious injuries, Jiro recalled. Maybe Bakugo, Kirishima, that guy from Class 1B, and Uraraka. But all the other matches ended pretty quickly or without much conflict, and no thanks to you two, she said, shooting a look at Midoriya and Shinzo. No hard feelings, right? Shinzo replied. Jiro smirked. I suppose. Her face fell and her eye became blank. Shinzo grinned. Don't be mean, Midoriya pouted at him. He shook his head and released his hold on her. She blinked, took a moment to realize what had happened, and then aimed a sharp earphone jack at him. He ducked and batted it away. And you too, Ida, Midoriya interjected. I'm so sorry about the sports festival, and honestly, Midoriya, there's no need to make a fuss over it. It was a competition. I wouldn't expect any less from someone with ambition equivalent to yours. Midoriya blushed furiously. Speaking of which, Shinzo sighed, back to Class 1C, Midoriya. Oh, right, he said, halting at the door to their classroom. I keep forgetting that you two aren't already in our class, said Jiro, twiddling her earphones around her fingers. We'll see you at lunch or something then, I guess. Maybe not today, Midoriya suddenly remembered. Shinso and I might be busy. Shinso blinked at him. We are? You'll see. He connected the dots far quicker than Midoriya had imagined. See you both later then, he grinned, and then waved goodbye to the confused hero students, opening the door to Class 1C. It's the stars of general studies, exclaimed one of their classmates as Shinso and Midoriya came into view. Siren immediately launched herself from Midoriya's pocket and flew over to the guy, landing on his desk and staring at him threateningly. I don't think you're allowed to have her at school, Canary, Oichi informed Midoriya cautiously. She followed us here, Shinso grumbled in response, all too used to answering Midoriya's questions for him. He was still rather grateful for it. Don't you have a cage for her? Questioned Kanenko. Siren fluttered over to her desk next and glared at him as if to say, I'll put you in a cage, cat. She doesn't like cages, Midoriya mumbled. The few who heard Midoriya speak exchanged glances. They'd rarely heard him speak before, of course, and now the whole world knew the truth about him, or at least most of it, about his selective muteness and the issues that arose with discovering his quirk. The door was flown open again. Hello, little listeners, President Mike cried, hurrying across the room and landing ineptly in his chair, only for it to spin around a couple of times. He slammed his hands on the desk to bring it to a halt. Are we ready for the register? Can I get a yeah? Yeah! Midoriya jolted in surprise at his classmate's exclamation. He had been too busy watching Siren hop across the floor to reach him again, rather than fly over the others' heads. Finally! President Mike shouted joyously. Took you long enough. Let's see if you can continue being that enthusiastic in the roll call. And they were, more or less. His classmates laughed as each of them replied to their name in as unique of a way as possible. Isayo Kojima, here! Izuku Midoriya! He raised his hand. The whole class stared at him for a moment. President Mike concluded. Perhaps they were expecting some kind of sound from him. Anything at all. Instead, all they got was a little chirp from Siren. It's here, President Mike said for him eventually. Hitoshi Shinso. Present, Shinso replied with far less enthusiasm than the rest of them. And Maki Matsumoto. Yeah! Yeah! President Mike repeated in his ear-splittingly loud fashion. All present and correct. And that's all I have to say, except Midoriya and Shinso, Principal Nedzu would like to see you at lunchtime. As the class turned to look at him once more, Midoriya let a small smile creep across his face. He turned to face Shinso, who smirked, and then signed. You were right, as always. Midoriya turned back to the front, briefly catching a glimpse of President Mike's confused expression as he looked down towards his open backpack, sitting by his seat. The black letter was there, its golden seal staring up at him, delicately kept intact after Midoriya had opened the message the night before. It was all going according to plan. Tea? Principal Nedzu was standing on his desk, holding out 2 cups of green tea to Midoriya and Shinso as they walked in. Both graciously accepted, whether they really wanted it or not, and sat down in the 2 chairs pulled up to either side of the principal's desk. Tweet, tweet! Oh! The principal exclaimed as he clambered back down into his seat. Siren hopped off Midoriya's shoulder to greet Nedzu across his desk. Hello, Siren. Nice to meet all 3 of you. I'm sorry I didn't keep her at home, Midoriya said hastily. His voice was a lot quieter than he would have liked, but she doesn't like cages. Nedzu smiled at him in the best way he could. Neither do I. Midoriya gulped. For such a short, squeaky-sounding little creature, his presence was awfully menacing, especially considering what Midoriya was planning to do and say in the coming minutes. On another matter of freedom, how is your selective muteness these days, Midoriya? Nedzu questioned, pouring himself his own cup of tea. You seem to be able to talk to me. Do you believe you are improving? Midoriya could feel Shinso's sarcastic thoughts. I think so. Yeah, I am, he stammered in response. I would expect that you would find it harder to start speaking to people who knew you more personally from before you started improving your capabilities in speech again, Nedzu presumed, sipping his tea. Midoriya nodded, staring at his shoes. But your time at the radio show has shown such a promising improvement already. I look forward to seeing you one day conclude your muteness as a thing of the past. Thank you, sir, Midoriya barely whispered. And how about you, Shinso? The principal turned to him. Have you faced any issues at all concerning the nature of your quirk and the opinions of your classmates during your time here? He had, from time to time. No, sir, he answered quickly. Good, good, Nezu smiled. How lovely to hear. His eyes followed Siren as she hopped across his desk, glancing curiously at the various things piled there. Now, I'm sure you're wondering why you're here. Not really, sir, were the words shot out of Midoriya's mouth before he had the chance to think about them. Nezu simply continued to smile. The two of you wish to transfer to the hero course, do you not? Midoriya saw Shinso tense up beside him. He tried not to do so himself. He had this under control, right? If he could at least act like he did, then perhaps he'd be that much closer to his goal. Of course, Midoriya, with your performance in the sports festival, we simply cannot ignore you. You have more than proved your potential, and perhaps after a few more tests, we can transfer you for the start of the next academic year. Midoriya's heart was beating way too fast. He knew this would be how it would go. As for you, Shinso, you also showed us a great power that could be very useful in the field of heroics. However, you didn't quite get as far in the sports festival and relied heavily on your opponent's lack of knowledge of your quirk. You might need further training and time before we can confirm a place in the hero course for you. Does that make sense? He didn't say anything, just stared at Nezu for a long moment before nervously glancing to Midoriya in the corner of his eye. No. Nezu looked back to Midoriya. No? Even Midoriya was surprised by his own proclamation. He quickly shook off the unfamiliarity of the burst of confidence and continued to plow forwards. No, it doesn't make sense. He ignored Shinso's stare as he transfixed his focus onto the creature, who could define their future. We want to be on the hero course specifically for that training. If you delay transferring us, we'll only fall further behind. A logical conclusion, Nezu said calmly, but good things come with time. Throwing the two of you straight into the intensity of the hero course could prove detrimental to your progress. We wouldn't want to expose you to more stress and anxiety than necessary, especially for someone like yourself, Midoriya. What did he mean by that? His mental health? I'm improving, he reaffirmed. Yes, and we wouldn't want to damage that, Nezu nodded. You're doing so well. Focus on continuing to recover, and once this year comes to a close, I'm positive that you will be ready for the pressures of heroics. And what about me? Shinso breathed. For once, he seemed to be struggling to talk more than Midoriya was. As I said, you rely too much on your quirk. You need skills beyond that if you hope to become a great hero one day. Show us an ambition to improve upon those abilities, and we will be more than happy to have you in the hero course too. And how exactly do I do that? Shinso pressed. He raised her head and said that he saw some potential in you. Midoriya was certain that Shinso's heart skipped a beat in that moment. Eraserhead? The Class 1A homeroom teacher? Nezu nodded. That smile had yet to fade from his face. He believes that you might have a chance as an underground hero, like himself. A hero who avoids the media, focuses on less flashy villains, but ones of equal, if not more, importance, of course. You need to keep the ins and outs of your quirk under wraps if you want it to be effective, much like Mr. Aizawa's, in a way. Midoriya could see a twitch of a smile on Shinso's face. After Midoriya first mentioned the hero Eraserhead to Shinso, they'd continued to talk about him from time to time. It was clear that Shinso had gone away and researched him himself. He had become a bit of a fan, although he'd never admit to it out loud. But Midoriya was enough of a fanboy himself to recognize when his best friend was becoming one. Of course, Midoriya would not work quite as well as an underground hero, Nezu chuckled to himself. The villains would hear you coming. Your quirk is much flashier, suited for bigger, action-based incidences, or perhaps rescue operations, rather than undercover work. However, thinking of that, you don't really know an awful lot about your quirk, do you, Midoriya? No, sorry, sir. No need to apologize, he exclaimed, jumping off his chair with the kettle in his hand to refill the boy's presumably empty teacups. Midoriya quickly drank a good volume of it as not to be rude. Shinso suppressed a snort at Midoriya's antics and seemed to not bother following his example. Your tea's getting cold, Shinso, the principal acknowledged after refilling Midoriya's hastily emptied cup. There was a moment of silence as Nezu strolled back around to his seat. The three of them had long forgotten about Siren. Meanwhile, she was busy exploring every corner of the highly esteemed mammal's office, blissfully unaware of the seriousness of the meeting. For someone who has had such little time with their quirk, you have done remarkably well with it. You have shown a profound ability and analysis into it. I suppose that it is something you picked up from elsewhere? Nezu continued, settling into the conversation so easily that Midoriya wondered why he was considered more human than the principal was. It was so normal to him. Shouldn't it be normal to Midoriya too? and not so nerve-wracking that he couldn't even trust his head to continue to let the words he needed to tumble out into reality. I still like to analyze quirks, sir. Specifically heroes' quirks. It's kind of a hobby. Midoriya admitted in a way that made it sound like a crime. And a wonderful hobby at that. A pursuit of knowledge purely to satisfy curiosity, rather than to gain greatness. But it seems to have proven useful. Your results in the General Studies entrance exam were nothing to sneeze at, after all. The principal turned back to Shinso again. Midoriya saw his friend dig his nails into his palm as the mammal's gaze met his. You, however, took the Hero Course entrance exam, didn't you, Shinso? You would know, Shinso snarled. He probably should have said it in a far less menacing manner. Principal Nezu didn't seem to think anything of it, though. As he said, your theoretical results were also rather good, but you fell more than short on the practical exam. I can't use my quirks on robots, Shinso retorted. No, a rather unfortunate drawback. It's not a drawback. Your exam is just biased. Midoriya knew he should have intervened before Shinso said something he would regret, but he felt a similar anger bubbling in his chest. He let Shinso spit the venom that he wanted to do oh so badly. UA likes to flaunt its success rate in producing top heroes, Shinso continued, gritting his teeth and narrowing his eyes. But of course, you can. You never give anyone without a flashy power half the chance. Nezu just leant back in his chair and let Shinso keep going. It unnerved Midoriya, but Shinso was persistent. Like what Midoriya said, if you want us to improve on our skills in order to become heroes, what better way than to put us in the hero course? Just waiting is going to put us even further behind. I'm sorry, Shinso, but the two of you aren't ready to enter the hero course right now, Nezu sighed. President Mike and Eraserhead are both interested in training the two of you separately and out of lesson time. It is a very fortunate situation to be in. You have some of the best tutors in the country in terms of the way your quirks work and how you need to learn to apply them to heroics. Later in the year, perhaps we can test your improvements by letting you join the occasional hero class and seeing how well you fare. We will officially consider transferring you after that. My decision is final. The principal's smile wasn't quite so happy anymore. More apologetic, and perhaps a little forced. Your decision might be final, Midoriya stammered, putting down his cup of tea, his hands reaching towards the yellow backpack that he had resting by his feet. He had emptied its contents into his locker earlier that day, so now all that remained inside it were the items necessary for his meeting. But mine isn't. He stood up, unzipped the bag, and poured every letter out onto the principal's desk. Midoriya felt little shame in ruining the order of his table. He tossed the empty bag back onto the floor once he was sure all the letters had fallen out, and grasped the bold black envelope from the pile. Midoriya took a deep breath and silently prayed. Voice, don't fail me now. These, he began unsteadily, staring at the insignia on the seal, are from hero schools. Every single one of them. Nezu hadn't stopped smiling, although it had begun to fade as he gazed over the mass of paper. And a vast majority of them state that I will be able to transfer to their hero course effective immediately, if I wish so, because they see potential in me too, but they've taken the initiative to act upon it. Unlike you, Shinso snapped. Midoriya swallowed his fear and pressed on. I could take up any one of these offers at any time I like. I could leave UA and become a hero on my own terms. He was getting louder now, more confident with his speech. He had to be, if this was going to work the way he wanted it to. They are offering to help me get my provisional license within the year, but if I stay here, in general studies, I might not be even able to pass the next exam first thing next year, because I wouldn't have received the training I need, that you said I need. But if you leave UA, Nezu interjected, what would happen to your position at your radio station? But if you leave UA, Nezu interjected, what would happen to your position at your radio station? He's trying to find a weakness in my argument, Midoriya realized. I have a contract with them, he remembered. Leaving UA wouldn't make a difference to that. But you would leave the mentorship of President Mike. You don't know that I would, retorted Midoriya. My place at the radio station gives me a passageway into his hero agency. The option will always be there. Nezu hummed thoughtfully as he glanced down at the various letters. These are all fairly low-rate hero courses. Not that they don't produce admirable heroes, but they don't get far, being more local heroes than someone who could earn themselves a place on the hero ranking. Well, firstly, I don't care about that stuff. Secondly, I have enough of a fan base to get me somewhere despite that. And thirdly, he waved the black envelope at the principal. Not all of them are low rate. He stood up, leaning closer to Nedzu as he showed him the symbol on the letter, passing it across the desk. This is from Shiketsu Academy. I'm sure you've heard of it. That I have, Nedzu agreed, examining the envelope sitting in his paws after placing his cup of tea gingerly down beside the scattered letters. That is the school I choose, Midoriya warned. Your rival school. Nedzu's smile grew a little bit wider. Interesting. I will go to Shiketsu, and I will tell the world about how little UA did for me, other than present mic. I have the media presence, the popularity, the ability to be heard. I can choose to go there and drag your name down with it. The creature was showing his teeth now, his smile stretching as far across his face as it could go. So, this is blackmail. What? No, of course not, Midoriya exclaimed, jumping back a little. It is blackmail, but it's not blackmail. That's a bit extreme to know. Tell me your proposition, Midoriya, Nedzu insisted, placing the Shiketsu letter down on top of the little mountain of envelopes before him. He faltered before saying, "Let me and Shinso into the hero course, by next semester at the latest, both of us, or else I will leave, and UA will regret turning its back on us." Silence fell between them for a moment. Even Siren was quiet. Actually, Midoriya had no idea where Siren was, so that didn't really matter. Nedzu clapped his paws together, positively beaming at him. "Wonderful!" Midoriya blinked at him. Huh? "Absolutely wonderful," he repeated. "I know very few humans with the confidence to threaten me like that, and with such a well-thought-out argument in mind, too." Midoriya was a little too stunned to reply, so Shinso took his place. "So, what will you do?" "Well, it appears my decision has been made for me. If you can undertake a situation as stressful as this and find you are not only still able to talk, but have the ability to propose such a daring agreement, then you are more than ready to take on the pressures of the hero course." Midoriya felt like he was about to pass out, but he wasn't about to make that problem known. "Of course, the issue still stands that the two of you are far behind the other hero course students. So, this is my proposition. You might be aware that, in the week after next, for the first time, first-year students will be taking internships under heroes who have reached out to us. What you do not know is that I have had certain heroes approaching me to ask if Canary is available for them. However, we simply cannot agree to such matters. You are not in the hero course yet. The paperwork isn't in place. And then comes the slight matter of insurance and governmental permissions and caretaking. No, we cannot allow you two to take part in an internship like the others will," Nedzu exclaimed. He had gotten up off his chair again, and was standing on his desk, retrieving Midoriya's copious amounts of letters to pile them neatly in front of him. "But, with the hero students away on internships, our lovely members of staff don't have their lessons to teach. I have been looking into it, and have come to the satisfying conclusion that, by alternating through UA teachers, both of you can have a week of study under their supervision, and a very similar method to the rest of the hero course." "Wait, what?" "That way, they will be able to review your abilities and perhaps begin to refine them. If you can agree with me that transferring next semester will be a benefit to us all, especially considering the paperwork and issues surrounding what course materials you need to know, we can make the transfer official then. As long as our teachers can each agree that both of you are capable as I believe you to be, after the week is over." Midoriya shakily accepted the sack of envelopes from Nedzu and gently put them back into his bag, along with the Shiketsu letter, almost squishing Siren in the process, who had reappeared in the backpack at some point during the meeting. "By staying in general studies for the rest of this semester, though, you'll be slightly ahead of your hero course peers. That will give you the chance to catch up on the hero topics you fall behind on, especially since you are fluent in English, Midoriya, and your grades show that you are not so bad yourself, Shinso. Perhaps you are picking up some skills from Midoriya already." "Wait, hold on," Shinso interjected, shuffling forward in his chair. "What are we doing again?" "I will need to confirm and organize a few things first, but I should have a timetable organized at the very latest by the end of next week," Nedzu grinned. He was now sitting back in his tall chair, his beady eyes glinting at him in amusement as he gazed upon their confused expressions. "Our UA heroes will assess your abilities during the internship week, and then you must pass your exams at the end of the semester for your current general studies department. You can then join our hero course students in their summer camp in order to make acquaintance with them, only to officially join this coming semester." They stared at him, mouths agape. "Well, he said, cocking his head to one side. Are we in agreement? In a daze, Midoriya and Shinso followed a singing siren down to the lunch hall. Shinso was so shocked, in fact, for the first time, Midoriya had to order food for him. It was hard to read the expression on Lunch Rush's face when Midoriya spoke, but he was pretty sure it was a smile. After paying, the two of them, well, three if you counted Siren, were waved down by Uraraka across the hall. The table was big enough for the six of them, right in the corner of the hall, not far from where Shinso and Midoriya used to sit alone at the beginning of the term. But somehow, it was the first time all six had truly been together. So, you were busy, Jiro pushed as soon as they sat down. What happened? Was it a meeting with Principal Nedzu? Guessed Uraraka. Did it go well? Ida asked. Will you be transferred into Class 1A? Questioned Todoroki. Shinso didn't even notice Siren almost crash landing into his food as he slowly turned to Midoriya. Care to explain? Midoriya sputtered into laughter. What just happened? Shinso wondered aloud, starting to laugh nervously alongside Midoriya. What the heck did you just do? Don't leave us hanging, Uraraka protested. She dropped her chopsticks, leaning across the table as if getting closer to them might somehow convince them to tell her what happened quicker. Shinso pointed at Midoriya accusingly. I think this bastard just blackmailed the principal. What? They all cried at once. No! Midoriya laughed uncontrollably. Shinso, that's not what happened. Then what did? You were there, and I'm just as clueless as anyone. Todoroki raised his hand leisurely. I'm confused. You're always confused, Jiro interjected. I think, Midoriya breathed, staring at each of his friends in turn with a bewildered smile across his face. I think we just got onto the hero course.